Alright, welcome back. This is Val. So, method number 3 is using background photos, which are static. And I'm going to show you what that means in a second. So, you can browse websites like pixabay.com and, for instance, look for a like city and, aerial city. Alright, and find cool photos that are a little bit higher up off the ground. Some of which are pretty cool. And so I thought I could just use this one here as an example. And you want to be logged in so you can download the high-res version. In this case, it's an 8K image. Or you can just download this HD size here as well. So pretty much this way of using photos is more like you can either use the photo as it is, or we can go into Photoshop and carve out a piece, recrop it so to speak, and just pick any portion of that would suit your render. You can also go for clouds and find here images of clouds. Most of them will be from ground, but some of them are a little bit higher up as well, like this one. These are pretty cool, right? And you also can do aerial clouds. And this will obviously be a little bit higher up and provide you with a little bit more options looking down towards the surface. So let me show you how this works, all right? So in this scene, I'm just gonna use the built-in Iray lighting, the same global illumination system we used in the first method. And you want to add the photo to a pane or tab called Environment. I have it over here, and we just click on Backdrop. Now remember, just a side option here, if you have been choosing different maps here in the environmental tab, like HDR or something like that, or even the built-in Iray global illumination system, if you override it here with something else, it will be that instead of what you have here. So this always overrides this one here, okay? Now, the option you have here obviously is to just go for browse, and I'm going to just simply select that background. And what it means that it's static is that no matter how I turn the camera, as you can see, the background is not moving. The only thing you can do with the background is you can apply some rotation if you like, or you can recolor it by clicking on the color here. For instance, make it more magenta or blue toned, or whatever you like, or just orangish in tint, or just go with the default white. Also, by just lowering this here on the right side, will obviously lower its intensity, which is great because you can now adjust how intense the background is compared to the other stuff you have in front of the camera. So what I'm going to do is throw in an airplane, and so I'm going to go all the way down, vehicles, and we got here polish luxury private jet. I add that. Now, when using static photos, the first thing you want to do, and remember, is that you don't have to match the camera. What that means is you don't have to move your camera like 5 kilometers up in the air. It's not really necessary. The only thing you need to do is to, I would say, slightly match the angle of the camera. So in this case, you want to place this horizon line, if you will, the box here inside Dash Studio, so that it roughly matches the horizon of the render of the photo. Another thing you want to do is obviously because if you use draw ground on, the global illumination system will indeed, just wait for that to happen. So there we go. When you have the draw ground option on, it will actually cast a shadow onto the photo, despite that it's not really there. There is no ground here. Just waiting for this to update real quick here. There we go. So if I just change the let me change this so I have this one here as texture shaded. It normally you don't want to, you know, I have this larger window as the Iray preview window. You don't want to do that in most cases. It just takes a lot of time to load the graphic card with all this stuff changing. So you want to use this mainly as, you know, something quick like this one here, texture shaded, and then the smaller here you can use as NVIDIA Iray preview. All right, so having that said, no matter how you change this here, there will be a ground shadow presented over here on the Iray preview. Let me just see if that's happening here. For takes a bit to update, and you don't want to have those shadows there, right? So for that matter, you want to turn off the ground. I'm not seeing the Iray preview here. I'm not sure what's going on. Normally this works. Not sure what's going on. It's not really showing Iray preview up here. It should, but it's not. Not sure what's going on. Anyway, let's ignore that for now. So if I just switch here to Iray preview, hopefully it will now display. Let me just pause or wait for it. All right, it's a little bit slow responding to big changes at times. Anyway, off with the ground. We don't want to have the ground on. Now, another thing that is very, very interesting that happens here, which is an option that you normally don't have with, you know, like you start lighting your scenes, which is really cool, is that now we can go underneath. Let me just, this takes forever to update for some reason. There we go. Let me finalize my camera using texture shaded preview. All right, so I want to have the ground slightly matching. We don't have to have it correctly. You just want this plane slightly aligned with what's happening below it. Then you can just, you know, go ahead and play with your camera, and you can also tilt the plane here. All right, you can move the camera closer and so forth. What you want to match here obviously is the focal length of the camera. So you got to kind of do an educated guess. Is it like a super wide angle, or is it like a normal you know, 40 or 50 millimeter angle? And this case is pretty normal. It's not a super wide angle that would just capture a lot more of a city. So I would just say around 40 or something like that is correct here. And obviously you want to, you know, adjust on this, on the jet. There are, you know, options here, pose controls, like remove the stairs and so forth. Close that door. There is some ring here in the middle. We can just go ahead and remove that. And there is a landing gear. All right. Close all the doors. Close all the hatches. Cool. Then we got landing gear and so forth, right? Now, what's really fun, as you can see on the preview here, is that you have something called SS ground color. So you can still use that to, I'm just going to pick green so that we can see it. You can still use it to illuminate the kind of from below And if there is some distinctive color happening at the bottom, see that there's no green. Let me do full display so we can see it better here. Let's do, I'm going to just choose surfaces and click outside so this yellow thing disappears. So now we're going to get a green tint from underneath. So it's like kind of like a secondary light source, if you will. So you can use this to take a look at the colors down here and say, hey, these are pretty warm-ish, like something like this, right? Pretty warm. And then you can just click on OK, and it will just feel more connected with the photo. And obviously another thing you have to do here is, and I'm not going to cover so much about this because we already covered that in the first video, is that you have let me just locate it. You have the environment intensity, which is the overall. So if I lower this, the sky and the sun will become less intense on the plane, not the background. Okay, the background is still the same. Just wait for it to update. Okay, so now you can see the plane is much darker right now. But you can still do the same thing we did earlier. You can do very dark overall and then increase the sun component. Let me just do that real quick. It takes forever to update it for some reason. It's a large prop. Each time we make the change, need to reload to the graphic card. And here we're gonna push the sun disk intensity, right? So now we're gonna have a much darker ambient light, so to speak, but much stronger sunlight. In the same fashion as we did in the first video, when we were adjusting the date and time and so forth, we need to match the shadows, so to speak, and the light direction. And if you take a look at the photo, it kind of feels like sunset-ish. The sun is slightly going down or up or whatever. So around 1800 I think is pretty accurate here, but we are in the wrong angle. Now what I just did was I increased the sunlight and lowered the overall ambient, which kind of looks a little bit too dark here, right? So let me go back to default, which is 1 and 1. We have the same control here to match that. And obviously you can also play with disk scale, sun disk scale, to have a more softer or sharper sunlight. I'm not going to repeat that, but it's the same from the first video, right? Now, the rotation. So let's try 100, see how that looks. Obviously we want the sun to come a little bit from the left. If you look at the environment of the photo, which takes a while to update here, you will see that the sun is indeed coming from the left side, and so we need to match that with the airplane. Let me just pause while it's updating. And now we have the sun coming from the left side, but it's a little bit too much. So I'm gonna do maybe 130. See if that looks better. I want a little bit more frontal lighting on it. So let's see how that works. I'm gonna pause the video again. That might have been the wrong angle. Let me go back to 70 the other way. Yes, let me just pause the video real quick. Alright, we're almost getting there. I'm just move a little bit more, maybe like 40. I like a little bit more nose lighting on it. And also gonna lower the lighting from the ground. So simply drag it down to a darker version of itself. That's it. Alright, so in the same fashion, I don't want to repeat this, but like if you recall in the HDR video, I showed you that you could set the ground to manual and indeed cast shadows, but slightly away from the plane by moving the ground down on the y-axis, right? You can do the same thing here. You can indeed locate slightly darker, project shadows. If this was a cloud photo, you can indeed let the plane cast shadows on it. In this case, I would maybe do maybe a little bit more still from the front. So let's rotate this slightly more. Let's see, where are we here? Dome rotation, let's do 25. And that is pretty much it. You have, unfortunately, a little bit limited options when it comes to using photos. You cannot use camera depth of field on them. It doesn't work. It will just blur the plane. It will blur the plane, but not the photo. If you want to have a blurred photo, you need to blur it inside Photoshop. And obviously, the way to blur the photo inside Photoshop is pretty straightforward. So that will be just loading the photo and applying, for instance, basic Gaussian blur. And you don't want to blur it too much, but just apply what you think would suit the render and save. And let me just call it NY Arial DOF. Save. And let me turn that off. Let's go back to Dash Studio, and now we can change here in the environment tab and click on here and click on browse and just simply select the other version we just used here. This will update the photo and now give you a kind of like a fake depth of field effect. The plane is not depth of field, it's completely sharp, but the background is blurred. And that's how you do it. And remember, if you zoom in on this now, you will unfortunately only zoom in on the plane and not the background. And for some reason this takes forever to update. It's a huge plane, probably with all the interior in it and so forth. But as you can see, I'm now zooming in on the plane, but I'm not really zooming in on the background. And if you want to have the background, if you want to zoom in on the plane and have get the background to follow, what you can do is simply carve out a portion of it. For instance, let's just do here a smaller portion like so. All right, and crop and save, and let's call it zoomed. And now what we can do is go back to Dash Studio, and now that we have a zoomed in airplane, man, this takes forever to update. I got to change. This is just driving me nuts. We are so accustomed to the internet and everything happening at once, and these graphic cards should really update really fast, but it's reloading everything, and it has the entire cabin and everything included, right? So really I would need to clean it up because there's a lot of props inside the plane which we don't see, that just take up a lot of time. Now I can just, because we have a zoomed in airplane, I can now match it with a zoomed in background which I just created a moment ago. So that's how you work and can still create stuff. And what you also can do in conjunction with this, while you're still using this, let me just use texture shaded here real quick so I can move it, is that you can create a slight depth of field effect on it, as long as it doesn't become more depth of field, so to speak, or blurred than the background. So what I mean with that is you can locate the plane here in the perspective view. I gotta change here as well. It's just driving me nuts. It goes so slow. This is a really heavy prop. There we go. Okay, so I can now locate the front of the plane and adjust the focal distance so that the line, which I can't see right now, let's do top view instead. Zoom out. There it is. That's better. So there is a line in between these two lines. That's where the focus is gonna be. It's very hard to see, but it's, the small red dot is over here. It goes through the nose. So now if I just picture this, we're gonna get the nose sharp and the rest of the plane slightly progressively more and more blurry. Now you cannot blur too much here. It's right now it's going to be way too blurry. Well, it kind of survives. You can see the engine is a little bit more blurry, right? But still the background is more blurry. As long as the background is more blurry, you're fine. But if you exaggerate this and have a too low number, then it's going to look a little bit funky. The background behind cannot be less blurry than the plane. All right, so we got to match that. So that's how you work with static images inside Dash Studio. Now, let me cover one more thing, and that is how to use something a little bit less static, which is this one. So it's a different type of background inside Dash Studio, which will give you a little bit more camera freedom, including slightly moving the camera back and forth and also zooming in. That will work, and depth of field will also work directly inside Dash Studio. So I'm going to cover that in the next video, guys. Thanks for watching. See you soon again.